the weird thing about me is I get to see both sides. I agree with you guys at certain aspects, and I agree with Sidrah, you know. As far as journals go, I think that should be released, but that's just me, you know. The reason why I say that is the journals have a lot of information, you know. David's were a little weird, you know. He wasn't the easiest person to read, but you know, as far as Komel's go, you know, that's all she spoke about. So I think, like, maybe in time Sidrah would be willing to, you know, release some of the journals, but it really shows you what Komel was going through, and I don't think she even understood what she was going through. So, yeah, I mean, it started in July when Nyla got sick, and, you know, she started writing just, I guess, her thoughts and stuff, and she talks about her dad and how frustrated she was with him, and just, you know, back and forth with the family. She was just trying to understand her feelings, and I think she was just very confused because she wanted to be there for her family, but I don't know why she didn't say that on her journals, but David didn't want that. He didn't want her coming down here, and that was, you know, that was the plan. Even after she disagreed with Mr. Alam about, you know, doing chemotherapy and stuff, she was supposed to come down here for Nyla's surgery. You know, Mr. Alam was going to buy her a ticket, and, you know, even though they didn't agree on things, they were still, you know, she was still there for them. And then one of the journals that stuck out to me was overnight she sat down with David, and he convinced her that she shouldn't come here. That's not her family anymore. Ronnie and David are her priority, and, you know, let them figure it out. And it's just a pattern. Like, it's very interesting, you know, reading them and seeing how it shifts and how her, even her own emotions change. You know, she starts doubting herself. You know, she starts off strong, and you can see a pattern.
Komel's mom, you know, is going through all of this pain, all of this suffering. Why wouldn't David want Komel to go see her mom? That was about
control. It was more about control for him. I think ever since that time when Komel called her dad and said she was leaving him, I think ever since then it was very, you know, it was very, I guess he was scared for that. He didn't really like for Komel to come down here. I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's only came down to Texas twice. And it was the 2 times that she got the cars, and one of those was Sidrah's graduation, but any other events, she never came down to Texas. Sidrah was the one that would go in the summer and, you know, spend Christmas with them because she just couldn't come down here. And I think that speaks, like, a lot, too, because it just shows, you know, I mean, what daughter wouldn't want to visit their, you know, her family and her friends in Texas? And I think that speaks a lot from his side on how controlling he was on that aspect. I mean, everybody, I mean, you know, you know, every man is different, and to a certain extent, you know, there is some control there, and that's totally fine. You know, everybody has that in their relationship, but, you know, to a point where, you know, you can't do certain things. He's making her quit her job, and he even writes that in his journal on how he planned it. And he was surprised that he was able to convince her. So, I mean, it just shows manipulation. You know, it just shows, like, how possessive he was over her. And, you know, the night of David's reunion, you know, he writes about that, how, you know, one of his old buddies from school, you know, complimented Komel and, you know, called her beautiful and whatever. And, you know, he didn't like that, and he just writes a whole article, which was so crazy, and it shows his possessiveness. He says she's mine, and I married her because of her beauty, and it's bizarre, you know. I don't have the journal with me right now, so I could read it, but he was very possessive. Even Ronnie, you know, he writes about her, how he came in between their marriage. And, you know, as a parent, I would never think my daughter would come in between me and my husband, you know. So, I mean, it just shows how possessive he was over Komel. So I think that's part of the reason why, you know, she wasn't able to come down here. He was scared. He didn't want her, you know, coming down here and maybe, you know, changing her mind and wanting to stay here in Texas. I don't know what was going through his mind, but I think that had a lot to do with it.
So when you say his journal, because we've heard from different people, multiple sources, blah, 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 about different journals, when you say that he wrote this in his journal, can you clarify which journal you're talking about? Because I've heard about several journals.
So the only journals I've seen is a written journal that he had. He had 3 journals. He only wrote in one. One of them had 1 page on it that apparently he was going to, you know, keep up with, but he never did. But the one I'm speaking of was a DK and a heart on it. That was the front page of it. So I'm guessing that was David and Komel. And
so these are
it was a written journal. Yes, these are written journals.
Okay, yeah, because we've heard about a written journal, a video journal, and then I guess this journal that came out.
I don't think there's any truth on the video journals. That is something I asked Sidrah about it, and she said that it was said that there was an online journal, but she hadn't seen anything from the online journal. It was just a written one that she knew of, and that's something we both have read.
With her journal, was there anything in there too that would help us understand why the family thinks David Crowley is guilty?
She talks about a lot of you know, mental abuse and, you know, him wanting to try different types of what would you call it, like drugs. And, you know, you could tell that she was very the way she wrote her journals, it basically, she was talking to the journal as to, like, I feel like that's something she was venting. Like, she was living 2 different lives. She was agreeing with David just to keep the peace in the house, but the way she truly felt, she was writing down on her journals. And there were a lot of different instances where she also spoke about being scared of him. She wrote one time that she took Ronnie out to, she just left the house because she was so scared of David, because I think that was the time when he tried shrooms. And he was hallucinating, and what else did she say? She said, I wish I had the journals on me, but she basically just talks about how scared she is, and that's not something that Ronnie should be around, and apparently she didn't even know he was going to do, which she was really angry about. They hadn't, that caused a really big rift between their relationship, because that's not something that Komel wanted Ronnie to see, you know.
Was David doing this by himself, or was he with friends?
No, this was by himself. And she wrote that she locked him in the room. I don't know which room she locked him in and how she did that, but she said that she was scared for him and she didn't know how to handle it. And she also wrote that she thought about calling his dad, but and she also wrote that he has alienated everybody, and I don't even know who to reach out to anymore. And, just certain things she says, it just shows how alone she felt. And, it shows that she didn't agree to it, most of the things that were going on. It's just, it's just beyond me that she was such a strong, independent girl, and she didn't think I just don't know why she just didn't leave, if she felt that way,
Yeah, I can relate to that, because I've dealt with a similar thing, and you do kind of wonder that, like, why don't they just leave? But obviously,
I've never been in that situation, so I wouldn't, I thought about it, but I've also heard that's, I guess you just get so into it, and you feel like you can change them, So
yeah.
I guess that's why they stay. But
do you know who? Go ahead.
Oh no, what was that?
I was just going to say, going back to the drugs, I was just trying to, do you know who he got those from? Is there any mention of, like, who, because obviously he doesn't just, and really, to be honest, I've never done shrooms or anything, but if I was going to do something like that, I wouldn't want to be by myself, and I definitely would not want to be around my wife. I'd want to be with close friends that I trusted.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was something, that was part of the reason why she was writing in her journal, because she was so that he would do that to her. He would put her in that position where she wasn't even aware of this, So that was part of the reason why she even wrote it in her journal. And he did mention in his journal about asking Danny Mason about shrooms, because apparently he had done them before. And Sidrah had asked Danny Mason about it, and he said that David had asked him about his experience, and Danny told him, I don't think you should go that route. I didn't have a good experience with it. And honestly, he also said that, what else did she say? He said that once you get that high, you always want something, more, like something more that will give you that high. So that's not the route he should go. And Danny told her that David said that he was just tired. He wanted something more. He wanted to feel something more. So, but Sidrah asked him if he was the one who had given him the shrooms, and he said he had no idea about it. So I don't know if it was Chris Peck or who it was who gave him that.
Okay. But she didn't. Do you know if if Komel ever experienced with any of that, or maybe that's not even relevant. Maybe that's.
She didn't talk about shrooms. She did talk about smoking weed. She did say that it helped her anxiety, and that is something she had told Sidrah in the past too, that she did. It helped her her anxiety levels. But,
right, and she would know because she was in the medical field, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so she didn't do it that often, but whenever her anxiety level was high, that is something that she would do. And she also suggested that for her mom's pain, like medical marijuana, for instead of the pills that she takes for her pain.
Sure. Yeah, they're giving my stepmom CBD oil, I think, for her bones or something like that, and it's definitely working.
It's very helpful. Yeah, it's actually helping with Mrs. Alam too. It helps her be a little more hungry, since she's on feeding tube or TPN. It helps her be a little more hungry and gain some weight and just not be as nauseous, and so yeah, I believe that helps.
Sure. Going back a little bit to what you said about when Komel wanted to leave David, I'm trying to get a good timeline about when that first happened, when Komel contacted her dad, and I know it's been mentioned, but just thinking here now, I'd like to have that so people can go back and say, okay, at this time. Don't
quote me on this.
Sure.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it was around 2012. It was summer 2012, I believe.
Okay.
Or no, actually, no.
I think it might have been later on.
No, it was actually before that. It was 2011,
before that.
actually. Yeah,
okay.
because when Komel had came down for Sidrah's graduation, high school graduation, that is something, Sidrah didn't even know about this. Mr. Alam did not tell Sidrah about this conversation at all. He kept it to himself and didn't tell his wife or Sidrah that Komel had called him. He didn't, I guess that was their little secret. But Komel had told Sidrah about it, and in 2011 when she came down here, and when we were having lunch, it was brought up, and I was there too. It was a very weird lunch. That is where I saw the disconnect from Komel.
Okay, so all three of you were kind of there?
Yeah, David was there too.
Who was there? Oh, David was there. Okay.
Yeah.
But there was something odd? You just felt something weird, or?
Komel was a very perky person, She has a lot of energy to herself, and, I'm sure you guys can gauge that from the videos on how she is. The way she was talking and the way she would look at David for approval, that's something I've talked about before too, but that is something that struck out to me. I don't think Sidrah had noticed that. I even brought it up to Sidrah, and I said, Komel's pretty different. She's talking a lot more like David, and she's like, well, they're married, you live with somebody, you start talking like them. And I was like, yeah, but, any little thing we talk about, she always looks at David, like, is it okay? I think I had mentioned that I had arranged a little get-together for the girls in her last visit in May. I asked if she could come spend the night, just us girls have movie night and stuff, and her first instinct was to look at David and see if it was okay with him, which I don't see why it wouldn't be, She was only down here for, not even 3-4 days. So, yeah, it's just, different things, anything she said or things that was talked about, that she would always look at him for his reaction. Is he okay? You could tell, that was her main thing. Even with sitting with Mr. Alam, Mr. Alam, I don't know if you know, he's very, he's a character. He's a very good person, and he'll speak his mind. So just, having him around David, her anxiety level was so high because she was holding David's hand, and she would just always look at him every time Mr. Alam would talk, to make sure, is he okay? It just didn't make sense. It was just a really awkward place to be in for myself.